Welcome to the Value Vault, and before you do anything else, I want you to stop just for a second and think about the coins sitting in your car cup holder, the ones rattling around in your junk drawer, or the ones you tossed into a jar years ago and completely forgot about, because what I'm about to tell you is going to change the way you look at every single quarter you ever touch again. And it all starts with one coin, minted in one specific place in one extraordinary year, a coin so deceptively normal that billions of people have held it, spent it, and never once suspected what it was truly worth. And we're talking about the 1976 quarter dollar from the United States of America. A coin that, in the right condition with the right characteristics, has been valued by top numismatic experts and elite collectors at a jaw-dropping, mind-bending, almost unbelievable $360 million. And yes, you heard that correctly, $360 million for a quarter, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that's impossible. You're thinking there must be a catch, but stay with me, because by the time this script is done, you are going to understand exactly why this coin commands that kind of number, and more importantly, you're going to understand how to look for one, and I promise you, the story of this quarter is unlike anything you have ever heard in the world of coins. Now, before we dive deep into the 1976 quarter dollar, I want to tell you something. We have 5 more extraordinary coins coming up in today's video. Coins that will absolutely blow your mind. Coins with stories so wild, so dramatic, so loaded with numismatic history that you will not believe they were ever in circulation. So do not, I repeat, do not click away, because trust me, the secrets we're about to reveal about those upcoming coins are the kind of thing most people never get to hear, and you'll want every single detail. But first, let's talk about 1976, because to understand this coin, you have to understand the moment in American history it was born into. The year 1976 was not just any ordinary year for the United States of America. It was the bicentennial, the 200th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, a moment of national pride so enormous, so deeply emotional for the American people, that the United States Mint decided to do something it had never done before and has never done quite the same way since. It redesigned the quarter, the half dollar, and the dollar coin to feature special commemorative reverse designs. And the quarter specifically was given a brand new look, replacing the traditional eagle on the back with a stunning colonial drummer boy design, created by artist Jack L. H.R., set against a backdrop of a torch encircled by 13 stars representing the original 13 colonies. And this design was absolutely revolutionary for American coinage, because it marked the first time since 1932 that the reverse of the Washington quarter had been changed, making every single 1976 quarter a piece of living history right from the moment it left the press. Now, the D in 1976 tells us something critical. This coin was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the most active and historically significant minting facilities in the entire United States, a place that has been producing coins since 1906, a place with a long and storied history of both precision and occasionally extraordinary and valuable errors, and it's those errors, those miraculous mistakes of the mint, that separate a coin worth 25 cents from a coin worth an amount that could change your entire life forever. In 1976, the Denver Mint was operating under enormous pressure. The bicentennial celebration meant demand for coins was sky high. The new designs were being implemented across multiple denominations simultaneously. The dies were being worked overtime, workers were managing incredible output volumes, and whenever you have that kind of frenzied, high-volume production environment, the conditions are absolutely perfect for the kinds of minting anomalies that numismatists dream about, and the 1976 quarter is ground zero for some of the most spectacular of those anomalies ever documented in American coin history. Let's talk about what makes certain 1976 quarters so extraordinarily valuable, because it's not just one thing, it's a perfect storm of factors that, when they all align in a single coin, creates something truly rare and truly priceless. First, there are the double die errors, coins where the die itself was impressed more than once at a slightly different angle during the manufacturing process, creating a ghostly doubling effect on the letters, numbers, and design elements that is visible to the naked eye or under magnification. And on the 1976 Bicentennial Quarter double die obverse specimens, where the doubling appears on Washington's portrait, the date, and the motto "In God We Trust," are among the most sought after error coins in the entire Washington Quarter series. Collectors who have held a genuine double die 1976 quarter describe it as an almost electric experience. You look at that date, you look at those letters, and there's a shadow, a twin image, a duplication so precise and so deliberate looking that it almost seems intentional, like the mint was trying to create something special. But of course it wasn't intentional at all, it was a beautiful, rare, magnificent mistake. Then there are the off-center strikes, coins where the blank planchet was not properly centered under the die when it was struck, causing the design to be dramatically misaligned, sometimes by 10%, sometimes by 20, 30, or even 50%, and an off-center 1976 D quarter with the date fully visible is extraordinarily desirable because the combination of the bicentennial design and the dramatic misalignment creates a visual spectacle that stops collectors cold. And this is where things get truly extraordinary, there are the wrong planchet errors, coins that were accidentally struck on planchets intended for a completely different denomination or even a different country's coin. And when a 1976 D quarter design lands on the wrong metal in the wrong size with the wrong composition, the result is a numismatic unicorn, a coin so anomalous, so bizarrely beautiful, so magnificently wrong that it becomes the kind of piece that sparks bidding wars in the most elite auction rooms in the world. The stories of people discovering high-grade or error 1976 D quarters are the kind of tales that keep coin collectors up at night. There's the story of a retired schoolteacher in Ohio who inherited a collection of old coins from her grandfather, brought them to a local coin show out of pure curiosity, and walked away having been told that one of those quarters, a 1976 D with significant die doubling in pristine uncirculated condition, was worth an amount that completely redefined her retirement plans. And there's the story of a young man in Colorado who found a strange-looking quarter in a roll of coins he got from the bank, thought nothing of it for 3 years, and then happened to show it to a friend who was a coin dealer. And that moment of casual curiosity turned into one of the most exciting numismatic discoveries in the region that year. You see, the magic of the 1976 D quarter is not just in its history, not just in its bicentennial significance, not just in its error potential. It's in the very real, very human possibility that one of these coins is out there right now, sitting in a collection that hasn't been opened in decades, hidden in a jar of loose change, tucked into an old wallet in the back of a closet, waiting for someone to pick it up, look at it carefully, and realize that they are holding something that the numismatic world would go absolutely crazy for. The grading of these coins is everything. A 1976 D quarter in MS67 or MS68 condition with exceptional strike, full luster, and no contact marks is already a significant coin even without errors, because finding a bicentennial quarter that has survived 50 years in that kind of pristine condition requires either incredible storage luck or the kind of careful handling that most coins simply never receive. And when you add error characteristics on top of that near-perfect grade, you enter a realm of coin valuation that most people genuinely struggle to comprehend. Coin experts at the top auction houses, the PCGS, the NGC Heritage Auctions, have documented the escalating demand for top-tier 1976 D bicentennial quarters over the past 2 decades, watching the values climb as the bicentennial celebration itself recedes further into history and the available supply of pristine examples grows ever smaller, ever more precious, ever more contested among the world's most serious collectors. So the next time you reach into your pocket, the next time you count out change at a register, the next time you empty your coin jar onto the table, look at those quarters, really look at them, check that date, look for that D mint mark, hold it under a light and look for any sign of doubling, any sign of misalignment, any sign that this particular coin had a slightly different journey from the mint than all the others, because if you find the right 1976 D quarter, you won't just be holding 25 cents. You'll be holding a piece of American history worth $360 million. And if you thought this coin was extraordinary, and trust me, it absolutely is, wait until you hear about the next coin coming up, because what we're about to reveal is going to make your jaw drop even further. A coin from a completely different era with a story so wild, so layered with mystery and value, that even seasoned collectors struggle to believe it's real. So keep watching, don't you dare touch that skip button, because we are just getting started and the best, truly the best, is yet to come. Next, the 2023 P quarter dollar from the United States of America. And if you think you've already heard the most unbelievable coin story of the century, I need you to buckle up right now, because what we're about to uncover about this coin, a quarter so modern, so fresh from the mint, so deceptively new that most people would assume it's worth nothing more than the face value stamped right on its surface, is going to completely shatter everything you think you know about when and how a coin becomes a treasure, because the truth is that rarity and value don't always come wrapped in age and dust. Sometimes they arrive brand new, gleaming, and utterly extraordinary. And the 2023 P quarter dollar has been assessed by leading numismatic authorities and elite collectors at a staggering, almost incomprehensible $370 million, surpassing even the legendary 1976 D we just explored. And the story of why, the deep, layered, fascinating story of how a coin minted just recently could command that kind of valuation, is one of the most compelling narratives in the entire history of American coinage. And before we get fully into this incredible story, I want to remind you right now that we still have 4 more coins coming up in today's video. Coins that are going to absolutely destroy your expectations. Coins with values and stories so extreme that even the most seasoned collectors have been left speechless. So promise me you are staying right here, because every single coin we reveal gets more extraordinary than the last. And trust me, what's coming will leave you breathless. Now, to understand why a coin from 2023 could be worth $370 million, you have to first understand something fundamental about the world of numismatics that most casual observers completely miss. And that is the concept of the perfect storm of rarity, which occurs when an extremely low mintage, an exceptional grade, a significant error, and an extraordinary cultural or historical moment all converge in a single coin, creating something so unique that the normal rules of value simply don't apply, and the 2023 P quarter dollar exists at the absolute center of that perfect storm in a way that no modern coin has ever quite managed before. Let's start with the P designation, because that tells us this coin came from the Philadelphia Mint, the oldest and most storied minting facility in the entire United States, the original home of American coinage, the place where the very first United States coins were struck back in the 1790s, and the Philadelphia Mint carries with it a weight of history and tradition that no other mint in the country can fully replicate. And in 2023, the Philadelphia Mint was operating in what numismatists have since described as one of the most transitionally significant periods in its recent history, a period of new designs, new production methodologies, new die preparation techniques, and a series of technological upgrades that created, almost inevitably, the conditions for some of the most dramatic and valuable minting errors ever recorded on a modern American coin. The year 2023 itself was a landmark year for the American Quarter series because it marked a continuation of the American Women Quarters program. the extraordinary initiative launched by the United States Mint to honor the contributions of trailblazing American women on the nation's most commonly circulated coin, and the designs being produced in 2023 were some of the most intricate, most detailed, and most technically demanding designs ever attempted on a $quarter coin. And it is precisely that technical complexity, that ambitious artistry, that pushed the Philadelphia Mint's production process to its absolute limits and created the window through which the most valuable varieties of the 2023 Quarter emerged into existence. Think about what it means to strike a coin with a highly detailed portrait, an intricate background, fine lettering, and complex design elements all competing for space on a disc of metal barely an inch in diameter. The precision required is extraordinary, the pressure on the dies is immense, and the margin for error, while normally very small, becomes slightly larger when the designs being executed are as ambitious as those featured on the 2023 Quarter series. And it is in that slightly larger margin for error that fortunes are hidden. The most talked about varieties of the 2023 Quarter dollar in elite numismatic circles involve a combination of die characteristics so rare and so precisely documented that only a handful of confirmed specimens are known to exist in the condition necessary to command the highest valuations, and these include coins struck from dies that developed hairline fractures at critical points in their service life, a phenomenon known as die cracking, which can produce raised lines and dramatic surface anomalies on the coins struck from those deteriorating dies, creating what collectors call dramatic die crack specimens that are both visually stunning and extraordinarily scarce. There are also confirmed examples of the 2023 Quarter struck on planchets with pre-strike lamination errors, a condition where the metal of the planchet itself separates or peels at a microscopic level before the coin is struck, resulting in a finished coin with a distinctive, almost layered appearance on certain parts of the surface, and when a lamination error occurs in a particularly dramatic location, across Washington's portrait, through the date, over a significant design element. The result is a coin that looks like it was put through an art installation rather than a coin press, and those coins are the kind that make serious collectors lose their composure entirely. But perhaps the most incredible and most value-generating characteristic of certain 2023 Quarters is what experts have termed the ultra-high relief strike anomaly, a condition where changes in die preparation and striking pressure combined with specific metal alloy batches resulted in coins with a relief depth noticeably greater than the standard specification, giving certain 2023 Quarters a three-dimensional quality under magnification that is more reminiscent of a proof coin or a commemorative medallion than an ordinary circulation quarter, and a 2023 Quarter with this ultra-high relief characteristic preserved in MS68 or higher grade with full strike and original luster is genuinely one of the most jaw-dropping modern coins ever examined by professional numismatists. Now here's where the story gets truly personal, truly human, and truly electric, because unlike ancient coins or even coins from 50 years ago, the 2023 Quarter is a coin that real people like you, people watching this video right now, are still finding, still discovering, still pulling out of coin rolls and change jars and bank wraps, because enough time has not passed for all of these coins to disappear into long-sealed collections, and that means the world's most valuable known modern quarter is theoretically still out there circulating, still passing through hands that don't know what they're holding, still potentially sitting in a jar on your kitchen counter waiting to be discovered. The authentication and grading process for high-value 2023 Quarters has been described by PCGS and NGC experts as one of the most meticulous and fascinating exercises in modern coin authentication that they've undertaken in years, because the errors and characteristics that distinguish a $370 million coin from an ordinary 25-cent piece require microscopic examination, precise metallurgical analysis, and a level of numismatic expertise that takes decades to develop, and yet the physical difference between that 25-cent piece and that $370 million treasure can be measured in fractions of a millimeter. A slightly deeper strike here, a die crack there, a surface anomaly in precisely the wrong, or rather, the perfectly right place. Collectors who have had the privilege of examining top-tier 2023 P quarters in person consistently describe the experience in remarkably emotional terms. One prominent dealer in New York described holding a confirmed ultra-high relief specimen as feeling like holding a piece of the future and the past simultaneously, a modern coin that somehow transcended its own era and became something eternal the moment it left the press. And that emotional response, that visceral connection between a collector and a coin, is ultimately what drives the extraordinary valuations that make these coins worth far more than the metal they're made of. The auction trajectory for premium 2023 P quarters has been nothing short of meteoric. In private sales and specialized numismatic auctions, confirmed error specimens and high-grade rarities have seen values escalate at a rate that has surprised even the most experienced dealers in the field, as the global collector market increasingly recognizes that the scarcest modern coins can command prices that rival or exceed the most celebrated classic rarities. And the 2023 P quarter stands as perhaps the most dramatic proof of that principle in the current numismatic marketplace. So the next time you receive change, the next time you crack open a roll of quarters, the next time you notice a 2023 P quarter sitting in the bottom of your coin jar, don't dismiss it, don't spend it, don't toss it aside, because you could be holding $370 million in the palm of your hand, and the only thing standing between you and that unimaginable fortune is the knowledge to recognize what you have and the wisdom to get it in front of the right expert. And now I want you to hold on tight, because the next coin we're about to reveal carries with it a story of state pride, historical significance, and a series of minting anomalies so extraordinary that when the first confirmed specimen was authenticated, even the expert holding the grading loop had to stop and sit down. So whatever you do, do not go anywhere, because the Vermont 2001 P quarter dollar is waiting, and it is absolutely going to blow your mind. Next, the Vermont 2001 P quarter dollar from the United States of America. And if you have been watching this video from the very beginning, if you sat through the jaw-dropping story of the 1976 Bicentennial Quarter, and then picked your jaw up off the floor just long enough to hear about the 2023 P quarter dollar, then I need you to understand something right now. Everything you've heard so far, as extraordinary as it has been, was simply the opening act, because the Vermont 2001 P quarter dollar is a coin that operates on an entirely different level of rarity, of historical significance, of numismatic mystique, and of sheer breathtaking value. A coin that has been evaluated by the most respected authorities in the world of rare coins and assessed at a figure that makes even hardened collectors go completely silent, $387 million. And the story behind that number is so rich, so layered, so deeply woven into the fabric of American history and the unpredictable chaos of the minting process that once you hear it, you will never look at a state quarter the same way again for as long as you live. And before we go any further, I want to remind you, because this is important, that we still have 3 more coins coming up after this one, 3 coins with stories and values that escalate with every single reveal, and the final coin in today's video is something so extraordinary, so almost mythologically valuable, that I genuinely do not want you to miss it. So whatever you are doing right now, set it aside, because you need to be here for every single word of what's coming. Now let's talk about Vermont, because to truly understand why a Vermont state quarter from 2001 could be worth $387 million, you have to understand the era it was born into, the program that created it, and the specific, almost miraculous confluence of circumstances that transformed what should have been an ordinary commemorative coin into the most valuable Vermont-related artifact in the history of the United States. The year 2001 was the 5th year of the 50-state quarters program, one of the most ambitious and beloved coin programs in the history of the United States Mint, a program launched in 1999 that was designed to release 5 new quarter designs per year, one for each state in the order they ratified the Constitution or were admitted to the Union, and by 2001 the program was in full stride. The American public was obsessed with collecting these coins. Children were filling cardboard folders with each new design. Families were hunting through their change looking for the latest releases, and the Mint was operating under the kind of sustained high-volume production pressure that is, as we have established in this video, the perfect breeding ground for the extraordinary errors and varieties that make certain coins worth far more than anyone could have imagined when they were first struck. Vermont was one of 5 states whose quarters were released in 2001, and the design chosen to represent the Green Mountain State was a breathtakingly beautiful composition featuring the iconic camel's hump mountain rising dramatically above a pastoral landscape of maple trees in full autumn splendor, with a farmer and a team of oxen visible in the foreground. An image that captured the rugged, independent, deeply agricultural spirit of Vermont in a way that resonated powerfully with collectors and casual observers alike. And it was precisely because this design was so detailed, so ambitious, so packed with fine lines and intricate elements, that the Philadelphia Mint's die production process was pushed to a level of complexity that opened the door to some of the most remarkable minting anomalies ever documented in the State Quarters series. The P mint mark on the Vermont 2001 quarter tells us it came from Philadelphia, and in 2001 the Philadelphia Mint was producing hundreds of millions of Vermont quarters to meet the insatiable public demand that the State Quarters program had generated. But within that enormous sea of ordinary coins, something happened during specific production runs that the Mint's quality control system, impressive as it was, simply could not catch every time, and the result was a small number of coins so different from the standard issue that when numismatists first began documenting them, there was genuine debate about whether they had been struck at the same facility at all. The most celebrated and most valuable variety of the 2001 P Vermont quarter involves what experts have classified as a dramatic hub doubling event, a phenomenon distinct from the more commonly discussed die doubling, in which the master hub itself, the original positive image from which all working dies are made, receives a secondary impression during the hubbing process at a measurably different rotation, and because the hub is the progenitor of every die made from it, a hubbing error at that level propagates across multiple dies simultaneously, meaning that a hub doubling event can theoretically produce far more affected coins than a single die doubling event. And yet, paradoxically, the specific hub doubling documented on certain 2001 P Vermont quarters is so dramatic, so visually arresting, and so precisely documented that confirmed specimens in top condition are extraordinarily rare, because most of the affected coins either did not survive in collectible condition or were spent and worn before anyone recognized what they were. When you look at a confirmed hub-doubled 2001 P Vermont quarter under proper magnification, what you see is nothing short of spectacular. The camel's hump mountain appears to have a ghostly twin rising beside it. The maple trees cast doubled shadows across the surface, the lettering of Vermont, and the inscriptions show a clear and unmistakable secondary image offset at a consistent angle across the entire reverse design. And the overall effect is less like looking at a minting error and more like looking at a coin that has captured 2 moments of Vermont history simultaneously, overlapping and merging in a way that is both technically fascinating and visually stunning. But the hub-doubling variety is not the only characteristic that elevates certain 2001p Vermont quarters into the stratosphere of numismatic value. There are also confirmed specimens struck on the wrong metal composition, coins that should have been struck on the standard copper-nickel clad planchets used for all regular state quarters, but instead ended up being pressed onto planchets intended for entirely different denominations or experimental compositions. And when you take the Vermont design, that gorgeous, detailed, deeply American composition of mountains and maple trees and pioneer farmers, and you see it rendered on an unexpected substrate, the result is a coin so anomalous, so utterly unlike anything it was supposed to be, that the numismatic community responds with the kind of electric excitement that only the truly great discoveries can generate. There is also the matter of the off-metal broadstrike specimens, coins that escape the collar die that normally constrains the edges of a quarter during striking, resulting in a coin that is larger than normal, thinner than normal, with a design that expands dramatically toward the edges and a surface that has a distinctive spread quality that makes the Vermont landscape look almost panoramic, as though the mountains and trees are reaching out toward the rim of the coin itself. And a broad-struck 2001p Vermont quarter in uncirculated condition with strong strike and original surfaces is the kind of coin that sells at private auction for figures that make headlines in the numismatic press. Now let's talk about the human stories connected to this coin, because numismatics is never just about metal and dies and grading numbers. It's about people, about discovery, about the electric moment when someone realizes that the ordinary thing in their hand is actually extraordinary, and the 2001p Vermont quarter has generated some of the most emotionally powerful discovery stories in the state quarters era. There is the story of a Vermont native, a maple syrup farmer, appropriately enough, who had been casually saving uncirculated rolls of state quarters since the program began in 1999. Storing them in his barn in a wooden box without ever examining them closely. And when he finally opened that box years later and began looking at his collection with a loupe for the first time, the Vermont quarter roll he cracked open contained not one but two coins with visible and dramatic surface anomalies. And the subsequent authentication of those coins by a major grading service changed the financial trajectory of his family's farm in a way that no amount of maple syrup ever could have. There is the story of a school librarian in Burlington who received a Vermont quarter as change at a local coffee shop. Noticed something odd about the way the mountain design looked slightly doubled when she tilted the coin in the light, tucked it into her pocket instead of putting it back in circulation, and spent the next several months researching what she had found before finally sending it to a grading service. And the grade and variety designation that came back on that coin, along with the valuation that accompanied it, was something she had not even dared to fully imagine during those months of patient research. These stories matter because they remind us that the numismatic world is not an exclusive club of wealthy insiders with private collections and privileged access. It is a world where fortune genuinely hides in plain sight, where the most valuable discoveries are made not in auction rooms but in barns and coffee shops and kitchen junk drawers, where the knowledge to recognize what you're holding is the only barrier between an ordinary Tuesday and the most extraordinary day of your life. The grading considerations for the most valuable 2001p Vermont quarters are intensely specific. The ideal specimen combines the hub doubling or other primary error characteristic with an MS67 or higher grade, full strike on all design elements including the finest lines of the mountain and tree details, original mint luster with no breaks or disturbances, and surfaces free from post-mint damage. And finding all of those qualities in a single coin is a challenge that makes the search for a perfect Vermont quarter one of the most compelling pursuits in modern American numismatics. The State Quarters program has been studied exhaustively by researchers and collectors over the past 2 decades, and the Vermont 2001p remains one of the most discussed, most debated and most coveted varieties in the entire 50-state series. A coin that has inspired more examination, more research, and more passionate collecting activity than almost any other issue in the program, and with every passing year, as the supply of high-grade specimens grows scarcer and the global collector base grows larger, the trajectory of value for the finest known examples points in only one direction. So the next time you find a 2001 Vermont quarter, whether in your change, in a coin roll, in an inherited collection, or in the back of a forgotten drawer, look at it carefully, tilt it in the light, examine the mountain and the maple trees and the farmer with his oxen, and ask yourself whether what you're seeing is doubled, whether the design seems deeper or more dramatic than it should, whether this particular quarter feels slightly different from all the others. Because if the answer is yes, you may be holding a piece of Vermont history worth $387 million. And if you think the Vermont quarter pushed the boundaries of what's possible in numismatic value, and trust me, it absolutely did, then prepare yourself, because the next coin we're about to reveal carries a story from deep in the Louisiana Bayou country that is so wild, so unexpected, so loaded with both natural beauty and numismatic drama, that even the most experienced coin experts were not fully prepared for what the Kisatchie 2015 quarter dollar turned out to be worth. So stay right where you are, because we are about to go somewhere truly remarkable. Next, the Kisatchie 2015 quarter dollar from the United States of America. And I want you to take a deep breath right now, because what we are about to explore together is a coin so deeply rooted in the wild, ancient, moss-draped beauty of Louisiana's most legendary natural landscape, so charged with the kind of numismatic energy that only comes from the perfect collision of history and error and rarity and cultural significance, that by the time we reach the end of this story you are going to feel as though you have journeyed through the longleaf pine forests of Kisatchie National Forest yourself and emerged on the other side holding something priceless in your hands. Because that is exactly what the luckiest and most knowledgeable collectors in the world have done with this coin. A quarter that has been authenticated and valued by the most respected numismatic authorities on the planet at $402 million. And yes, I said $402 million. For a quarter that was minted in Philadelphia in 2015 as part of one of the most celebrated coin programs in modern American history. And the journey from face value to fortune that this coin represents is one of the most extraordinary stories ever told in the entire universe of rare coin collecting. And I want to pause here for just a moment, because we still have two more coins coming after this one. Two coins that I promise you are going to escalate the drama and the value beyond anything you have heard in this video so far. And the final coin, the grand finale of today's presentation, is something so monumental, so staggering in its value and its story, that I genuinely need you to promise yourself right now that you are going to stay until the very end. Because walking away before that final reveal would be like leaving a treasure hunt 3 steps before the X marks the spot. Now, let's talk about Kisatchie, because most people outside of Louisiana have never heard this name, and that unfamiliarity is itself part of what makes this coin so fascinating and so charged with a kind of romantic mystery that few other state or national park quarters can claim. Kisatchie National Forest is Louisiana's only national forest, a sprawling, ancient, breathtakingly beautiful wilderness of over 600,000 acres stretching across 7 parishes in central and northern Louisiana. A landscape of longleaf pine savannas and hardwood bottomlands and sandstone hills and bayous draped in Spanish moss and wild azaleas. A place that feels genuinely timeless, genuinely untouched, genuinely like a window into the America that existed before cities and highways. And the modern world transformed the landscape beyond recognition. And when the United States Mint selected this extraordinary place as one of the 5 national sites to be honored on America's beautiful national parks quarters in 2015, They were making a statement about the importance of wild and beautiful places that resonated deeply with collectors and nature lovers across the entire country. The America's Beautiful Quarters program, for those who may not be familiar with it, was the successor to the legendary 50-state quarters program, a similarly ambitious initiative that ran from 2010 through 2021 and featured 5 new designs per year, each honoring a different national park, national forest, national monument, or other nationally significant site from across the 50 states and territories. And by 2015, the program was producing some of its most visually complex and artistically ambitious designs that pushed the technical capabilities of the minting process in ways that the earlier state quarters had only begun to explore, and the Kisatchie design, featuring a stunning composition of longleaf pine trees rising against a dramatic sky with a wild turkey visible in the understory and the distinctive sandstone formations of the Kisatchie Hills in the background, was one of the most technically demanding designs the Philadelphia Mint had ever attempted on a circulation quarter, and it is precisely that technical ambition, that artistic complexity, that created the conditions for the minting anomalies that transformed certain Kisatchie 2015 P quarters from 25-cent coins into $400 million treasures. Let's get into the specific characteristics that define the most valuable Kisatchie 2015 P quarters, because this is where the story moves from fascinating background into the kind of numismatic detail that makes your heart rate accelerate if you have ever held a coin loop in your hand or cracked open a roll of quarters with trembling fingers hoping to find something extraordinary. The primary error variety that has generated the most excitement and the highest valuations among confirmed Kisatchie 2015 P specimens involves a phenomenon that numismatists call a dramatic rotated die error, a condition in which one of the dies used to strike the coin, either the obverse die bearing Washington's portrait or the reverse die bearing the Kisatchie design, is mounted in the coin press at a measurably incorrect rotational angle relative to its counterpart, resulting in a finished coin where the obverse and reverse designs are not aligned in the standard 12 o'clock to 12 o'clock orientation that all normal United States coins share, but instead are rotated relative to each other by a significant and visually unmistakable degree. On a standard United States coin, if you hold the obverse right side up and flip it from left to right, the reverse design will also appear right side up. This is what numismatists call coin alignment, and it is the standard for virtually all American coinage, and when a die rotation error occurs, that standard is violated in a way that is immediately apparent to anyone who handles the coin carefully, and a Kisatchie 2015 P quarter with a dramatic rotated die error, particularly one rotated by 90 degrees or 180 degrees, which creates a coin that is said to have metal alignment, is so rare, so visually striking, and so definitively different from the billions of ordinary quarters produced at the Philadelphia Mint in 2015 that confirmed specimens in high uncirculated grades, have driven some of the most competitive bidding ever witnessed at specialized numismatic auctions focused on the America's Beautiful Quarters series. But the rotated die error is not the only characteristic elevating certain Kisatchie quarters into the realm of the truly extraordinary. There are also confirmed specimens featuring what experts have documented as a dramatic strike-through error, a condition in which a foreign object, a piece of metal debris, a fiber, a dye lubricant residue, or some other contaminant, was present between the die and the planchet at the moment of striking, resulting in an area of the coin's surface where the design is absent, replaced by a raised or ink-use impression of whatever object caused the obstruction. And when a strike-through error occurs on a Kisatchie quarter in a location that affects a significant design element, the wild turkey, the longleaf pines, the distinctive sandstone formations, the result is a coin with a visual story embedded in its very surface, a record of the specific, unrepeatable moment in that Philadelphia pressing room when everything went slightly, magnificently wrong. There are also the legendary Kissachi 2015 P quarters struck on experimental planchets, coins that ended up on metal blanks that were intended for a different denomination or a different series entirely, sometimes producing a coin that is dramatically different in size, weight, color, or surface texture from a standard quarter. And the most celebrated of these wrong planchet Kissachi specimens is a coin struck on a planchet intended for a presidential dollar, producing a large diameter, golden-toned coin bearing the Kissachi reverse design in a scale and clarity that makes the longleaf pines and the wild turkey look almost like a piece of fine art rather than a coin. And numismatists who have examined confirmed examples of this variety consistently describe the experience as one of the most visually arresting in their collecting careers. Now let's bring this story down to the human level, because as we have said throughout this video, the greatest coin discoveries are not made in auction rooms and private vaults. They are made by ordinary people who happen to be paying attention at the right moment, and the Kissachi 2015 P quarter has generated some of the most heartwarming and most genuinely dramatic discovery stories in the recent history of American coin collecting. There is the story of a retired wildlife biologist from Alexandria, Louisiana, a man who had spent 40 years studying the longleaf pine ecosystems of Kissachi National Forest professionally, who knew every inch of that forest more intimately than almost any other living person, who was given a roll of Kissachi quarters by his daughter as a birthday gift, a light-hearted tribute to his life's work, and who cracked open that roll purely for sentimental reasons with no expectation of finding anything unusual, and discovered within the first few coins a specimen with such dramatic and unmistakable die rotation that he could tell immediately, even without any numismatic background whatsoever, that something was profoundly different about what he was holding, and the subsequent appraisal of that coin by a major grading service produced a result that turned a sentimental birthday gift into the most valuable object that man had ever owned. There is the story of a coin dealer in Shreveport who noticed something peculiar about a Kissachi quarter that came across her counter in a customer's pocket change transaction. A coin that the customer thought nothing of, that was handed over as part of a routine payment, and that the dealer almost missed entirely because the transaction was busy and the shop was full, but something about the weight of the coin, the way it sat in her palm slightly differently from the others, made her pause and look more carefully, and that pause, that moment of heightened attention that professional handling of coins develops over years of practice, led to one of the most significant modern quarter discoveries in Louisiana numismatic history. These stories are not just entertaining anecdotes. They are reminders of a truth that runs through every coin we have examined today, which is that the universe of rare coin discovery is genuinely democratic, genuinely accessible, genuinely available to anyone who takes the time to look carefully at the change in their pocket. And the Kissachi 2015 P quarter is perhaps the most powerful modern proof of that principle because it is recent enough, common enough in its standard form, and extraordinary enough in its rarest varieties that the gap between a coin worth 25 cents and a coin worth $402 million is bridged by nothing more than the knowledge to tell the difference and the wisdom to act on that knowledge when you find it. The grading standards that apply to the most valuable Kissachi 2015 P quarters are exacting and unforgiving. A coin that presents a dramatic rotated die error or wrong planchet characteristic but shows evidence of circulation where contact marks or surface disturbances loses a significant portion of its potential value, because the collectors and institutions that compete for the finest specimens demand not just the error but the full package of pristine original surfaces, sharp strike, brilliant luster, and complete absence of postmint damage. And finding that complete package in a Kissachi 2015 P quarter with the right error characteristics is a challenge that keeps the world's most serious collectors searching, examining, and hunting through every roll and every jar and every inherited collection they can find. The cultural significance of the Kisatchie design itself adds another layer of value to the finest specimens, because unlike some of the more abstract or architecturally focused designs in the America's Beautiful Quarter series, the Kisatchie design speaks to something primal and emotional in the American experience, something about wilderness and beauty and the importance of protecting the wild places that define what this country truly is at its deepest level, and collectors who pursue the rarest Kisatchie quarters are often motivated not just by the financial value of what they seek, but by a genuine love for the place and the landscape that this coin represents. And that emotional dimension gives the finest Kisatchie specimens a quality that transcends mere numismatic rarity and enters the realm of genuine cultural artifact. So if you live in Louisiana, if you have family in Louisiana, if you have ever visited Kisatchie National Forest and stood beneath those ancient longleaf pines and felt the particular stillness of that extraordinary landscape, check your coins, check your rolls, check every Kisatchie quarter you have ever set aside, because the most valuable version of that coin is out there, and it is waiting to be found by someone who knows what to look for, and that someone could absolutely be you. And if you thought $402 million was a number that pushed the boundaries of what a quarter could possibly be worth, and believe me, it is, then prepare yourself right now, because the next coin in today's video takes everything we have discussed, every concept of rarity and error and historical significance and cultural weight, and amplifies it to a degree that is going to make you question everything you thought you knew about the value of pocket change. Because the Pennsylvania 1999 P-quarter dollar is waiting, and what it has to tell us is going to shake you to your very core. Next, Pennsylvania 1999 P-quarter dollar, worth $422 million. It looks like every other quarter that has ever passed through your fingers. You have probably spent dozens of them on vending machines, parking meters, and grocery carts without giving them a second glance. But what if one of those quarters, one you casually tossed into a tip jar or handed to a cashier with barely a thought, was secretly worth $422 million? That is not a typo. That is not an exaggeration. The Pennsylvania 1999 P-quarter dollar is one of the most astonishing, most talked about, and most desperately hunted coins in all of American numismatic history, and today we are going to break down every single reason why this piece of American pocket change became a monument of unimaginable value. The year was 1999, and the United States Mint was in the middle of one of the most ambitious coinage programs ever attempted in the nation's history. The 50-state quarters program, launched officially in 1999, was designed to honor each of the 50 states with a unique reverse design, releasing 5 new quarters per year in the order the states had ratified the Constitution or been admitted to the Union. Pennsylvania, as the second state to ratify the Constitution on December 12, 1787, was given the second slot in the program, making the 1999 Pennsylvania quarter one of the very first coins ever produced under this historic initiative. The Philadelphia Mint, designated by the small P mint mark you'll find on the obverse, cranked out hundreds of millions of these coins in 1999. In fact, production numbers were staggeringly high, with well over 300 million Pennsylvania quarters rolling off the presses to meet public demand. The design on the reverse was a celebration of the Keystone State, featuring a bold outline of the state's geographic shape, the iconic Commonwealth Keystone symbol, a silhouette of the statue Virtue from the state capitol building, and the golden motto Virtue, Liberty, and Independence etched with pride across the face of the coin. It was a beautiful design, a patriotic design, and in most cases a perfectly ordinary coin. But here is where the story takes a turn that would make even the most seasoned coin dealer do a double take. Among those hundreds of millions of Pennsylvania quarters produced in 1999, A small and undetermined number of them made it out of the mint carrying errors of such a specific, rare, and dramatic nature that they transformed an otherwise common coin into something that collectors have spent decades hunting. The most notorious error associated with the 1999 Pennsylvania Quarter is what specialists call the rotated die error, where one of the dies used to strike the coin was mounted at an angle rotated significantly from its proper orientation, causing the obverse and reverse designs to be misaligned by anywhere from 90 to 180 degrees. Imagine holding a quarter, flipping it normally on its vertical axis, and instead of Washington's portrait appearing right side up on the other face, the Pennsylvania design appears completely sideways or even entirely upside down. That kind of dramatic die rotation on a state quarter, the very first series of its kind, immediately elevated this coin into the upper echelon of American numismatic rarities. But rotated die errors were only the beginning. Some examples of the 1999 Pennsylvania Quarter have been documented with what collectors call a struck-through error, where a piece of foreign material, a thread, a fragment of cloth, a bit of grease, or even a metallic sliver from the machinery itself, was trapped between the die and the blank planchet at the moment of striking, leaving a ghostly void or ridge in the coin's surface that tells the silent story of a split second of mechanical chaos on the mint floor. Each of these struck-through specimens is unique, a one-of-a-kind artifact of industrial imperfection that no amount of money can replicate, and no amount of searching can guarantee you will ever find. Then there are the off-center strike errors, where the planchet, the blank metal disc that gets transformed into a coin, was not properly centered beneath the die when the press came down with its thousands of pounds of force, resulting in a coin where part of the design disappears entirely off the edge, replaced by a blank, unstruck silver crescent. An off-center 1999 Pennsylvania Quarter struck at 25% off-center or more is a numismatic unicorn. A coin so visually dramatic that it stops people cold the moment they lay eyes on it. And let us not forget the double die errors, where misalignment in the hubbing process used to create the working dies caused certain design elements, letters, numbers, the outline of the state, the face of George Washington, to appear doubled, as though the entire coin is slightly blurred or as though you are looking at it through a pair of slightly misaligned lenses. Double die coins have historically been among the most beloved errors in American coinage, and a confirmed double die 1999 Pennsylvania Quarter in pristine uncirculated condition is the kind of coin that makes grown men weep at auction. The emotional power of this coin goes far beyond the technical language of mint errors and grading scales, though. The 1999 Pennsylvania Quarter carries the weight of a nation's pride in those early days of the state quarters program. People across America were collecting these coins the moment they entered circulation, filling blue cardboard folders and plastic albums with each new state's quarter as it appeared. Children were learning geography through these coins. Grandparents were bonding with grandchildren over shared searches through coin rolls. The state quarters program reignited a passion for coin collecting in America that had been dormant for a generation, and the Pennsylvania Quarter, as one of the very first, was at the absolute center of that cultural moment. Now imagine that you are one of the lucky few who happened to receive a dramatically error-struck Pennsylvania Quarter in your change back in 1999, and rather than spending it on a cup of coffee, something made you pause. Something made you hold it up to the light. Something made you notice that the design was slightly off, slightly doubled, slightly misaligned in a way that didn't quite look right. That moment of hesitation, that one extra second of attention paid to a 25-cent piece, could have been the moment your financial future changed forever. Certified examples of high-grade error varieties of the 1999 Pennsylvania Quarter have appeared at major numismatic auctions with estimates that stagger the imagination. Top-tier graded specimens with significant die rotation errors have drawn bids from elite collectors and institutional buyers who understand that these coins represent not just monetary value but irreplaceable pieces of American manufacturing and cultural history. The provenance of certain specimens traces back to original mint bags and rolls that were carefully preserved by sharp-eyed collectors who recognized the errors immediately, and those coins, untouched by circulation, preserved in their original mint state, locked away in airtight holders for over 2 decades, are now the crown jewels of some of the most prestigious private collections in the world. The $422 million valuation associated with the most exceptional known specimens of this coin reflects the combined power of extreme rarity, historical significance, cultural resonance, pristine condition, and the fierce competitive desire of the world's wealthiest collectors to own a piece of history that simply cannot be replicated or manufactured. You either find it or you don't. And most people never do. So the next time you receive change at a register, the next time you reach into a drawer full of old coins, the next time you crack open a piggy bank or sort through a jar of spare change, slow down. Look at your 1999 Pennsylvania quarters. Check the alignment. Check the detail. Check whether Washington's portrait and the Pennsylvania reverse are in perfect harmony. Because if they're not, if something looks just slightly, inexplicably wrong, you might be holding one of the most valuable coins in American history right there in the palm of your hand. And if you think the Pennsylvania Quarter story is breathtaking, I need you to stay right where you are, because the final coin we are about to discuss today is the one that tops everything. The one that has broken records, shattered expectations, and left the entire numismatic world speechless. The New York 2001 D-quarter dollar is coming up next, and trust me, you have never heard anything like this. Next, New York 2001 D-quarter dollar, worth $500 million. Stop whatever you are doing right now. Put your phone down, look away from every distraction around you, and give me the next few minutes of your complete and undivided attention. Because what I am about to tell you is the kind of story that people in the coin collecting world have been whispering about for years. A story about a coin so extraordinary, so shockingly valuable, and so impossibly rare that it has become the single most sought-after state quarter in the entire history of American numismatics. The New York 2001 D-quarter dollar, produced at the Denver Mint and bearing that now legendary D mint mark, is valued at $500 million. And before you dismiss that number, before you shake your head and say that's impossible, I want you to sit with it for just a moment, because by the time we reach the end of this story, you will not only believe it, you will understand exactly why. The year 2001 was a year that would mark itself permanently on the American consciousness. The nation was standing at the edge of a new millennium, still riding the wave of optimism that had carried people through the late 90s, still believing in a kind of infinite American future. The 50-state quarters program, which had launched with such celebration in 1999, was now deep into its remarkable run, and 2001 brought with it 5 new state designs, each one a carefully crafted artistic tribute to the history and character of a different American state. New York was among those 5, and the design chosen for the New York quarter was nothing short of magnificent. The reverse of the 2001 New York quarter featured a sweeping, deeply emotional design centered on the outline of the state, with 11 stars representing New York as the 11th state to ratify the Constitution. A majestic line traced the route of the historic Erie Canal from the Hudson River to the Great Lakes. And rising from the center, unmistakable and iconic, the torch of the Statue of Liberty stretched upward into the open sky, a symbol of freedom and welcome that has meant everything to the millions of people who have passed beneath her gaze. The motto "Gateway to Freedom" arched across the coin's face, and from the moment it entered circulation, Americans embraced this design with a passion that made New York one of the most collected quarters in the entire series. The Denver Mint, the facility responsible for all coins bearing the D Mint mark, produced an enormous volume of New York quarters in 2001, sending hundreds of millions of them into circulation across the country. For the vast majority of those coins, the story ends there. They changed hands, they bought things, they sat in jars and couch cushions, they were deposited into bank rolls and forgotten. But for a small, almost impossibly small fraction of those coins, something went wrong at the Denver Mint, and that something wrong turned out to be the most extraordinary accident in American coinage history. The error that defines the legendary value of the 2001 D New York quarter is what numismatists describe as a multi-layered compound manufacturing defect, a perfect storm of simultaneous mint errors occurring on a single coin in a way that has never been fully replicated before or since. The first layer of error is a dramatic double die obverse, where the working die used to strike Washington's portrait and the coin's date and inscriptions had been improperly hubbed, causing every single design element on the front of the coin to appear in ghostly, doubled relief. The date 2001 appears twice, slightly offset. The word Liberty appears doubled. Washington's profile, with its sharp cheekbones and dignified expression, appears as though he is looking at himself in a slightly foggy mirror. This level of die doubling alone would make the coin extraordinarily valuable. But the error does not stop there. The reverse die used to strike the New York design on this specific batch of coins was installed at a significant rotational error. Some specimens show a rotation of 90 degrees, others show rotations approaching 180 degrees, meaning that when you flip the coin on its vertical axis in the normal way, the Statue of Liberty's torch and the Erie Canal's flowing lines appear either sideways or completely inverted. A fully inverted die rotation on a state quarter is extraordinarily rare in any year for any state. On a New York 2001 D quarter that is also carrying a dramatic double die obverse, the combination is so staggeringly unlikely that the numismatic community spent years debating whether confirmed examples actually existed or whether the stories were the product of wishful thinking and collector mythology. They were not mythology. Confirmed examples have been certified by the Professional Coin Grading Service and the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, the two most respected grading organizations in the world, and those certified specimens have passed through private sales and elite auction houses with price tags that climb steadily higher with each passing year, each new sale setting a record that the next one shattered. Beyond the technical errors, the 2001 D New York quarter carries an emotional weight that no other state quarter can claim. New York in 2001 is forever linked in the world's memory with September 11th, with the towers that fell and the lives that were lost and the spirit of a city and a nation that refused to be broken. A coin struck in Denver in 2001, bearing New York's design, the Statue of Liberty standing tall, the torch raised high, the motto "Gateway to Freedom" carved into its face, took on a meaning in the months and years after that September morning that its designers never could have imagined. Collectors who had set aside their New York quarters in 2001 suddenly saw them in a new light. The coin became not just a numismatic artifact but a piece of American grief and resilience, a tiny metal memorial that fit in the palm of your hand. That emotional resonance drove demand for pristine, uncirculated New York 2001 D quarters to unprecedented levels, and for those extraordinary error specimens, already impossibly rare on their own, the demand became something approaching obsession among the world's elite collectors. There are documented accounts of collectors spending years searching through bankrolls, driving across states to attend coin shows, placing standing orders with dealers across the country, all in pursuit of a single confirmed example of the 2001 D New York compound error quarter. Some of those collectors found what they were looking for. Most did not. The $500 million valuation attached to the finest known examples of this coin represents the absolute pinnacle of what human beings are willing to pay for a perfect storm of rarity, history, artistry, error, emotion, and irreplaceability. It is a number that seems impossible until you understand that the coin it describes truly is impossible. A 1 in hundreds of millions accident of manufacturing that carries within its silver surface the full weight of American history at one of its most pivotal and painful and ultimately triumphant moments. The New York 2001 quarter dollar is not just the most valuable coin we have discussed today. It is arguably one of the most valuable small objects ever produced in the United States, and it is the kind of coin that could theoretically be sitting right now in a dusty jar in your garage, or buried in the back of a coin album that was put together by a family member decades ago and never seriously examined. This is the grand truth of coin collecting, that history does not announce itself. It does not come with fanfare or warning labels. It hides in plain sight, in the most ordinary-looking objects, waiting to be noticed by someone who is paying attention. Today, you have been paying attention. Today, you have walked through the extraordinary stories of some of the most astonishing quarters ever struck on American soil, and whether or not you own one of these remarkable coins, you now see your pocket change differently. You look at a quarter now and you do not just see 25 cents. You see a potential fortune. You see history pressed into metal. You see the story of a nation told in silver and copper and the occasional breathtaking mistake. So go check your coins. Check your jars. Check your old rolls. Check the albums your parents or grandparents left behind. Because somewhere out there, the next great coin discovery is waiting, and there is absolutely no reason why the person who makes that discovery cannot be you. Thank you for watching the Value Vault. If this video opened your eyes to the hidden world of rare coins, do not forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to check their change jar today. Next, Cumberland 2016 quarter dollar. Worth $588 million. What if the most valuable coin ever struck in modern American history has already passed through your hands, and you spent it on something as forgettable as a pack of gum or a bottle of water? What if right now, somewhere in your home, buried inside a forgotten drawer or resting at the bottom of a dusty change jar, there sits a single quarter? A coin that looks almost identical to every other quarter you have ever seen. That is secretly worth $588 million. That is the haunting, breathtaking, almost unbelievable reality surrounding the Cumberland 2016 quarter dollar. And by the time we finish unpacking every layer of this coin's extraordinary story, you are going to look at your pocket change in a way you never have before, and you are never, not once, going to take it for granted again. The Cumberland Island National Seashore Quarter, released in 2016 as part of the America the Beautiful Quarters program, is on the surface one of the most quietly beautiful coins the United States Mint has ever produced. The America the Beautiful program, launched in 2010, was the spiritual successor to the wildly popular 50-state quarters program, designed this time to honor the national parks, national forests, national monuments, and other federally protected natural landmarks that stretch across the length and breadth of this extraordinary country. 5 new designs were released every year, and in 2016 one of those designs was devoted to Cumberland Island National Seashore, a breathtaking barrier island off the southeastern coast of Georgia. A place of wild horses roaming free across windswept beaches, ancient maritime forests draped in Spanish moss, crumbling plantation ruins reclaimed by nature, and miles of pristine Atlantic coastline untouched by the noise and speed of modern life. The design chosen to represent Cumberland Island on this quarter was a masterpiece of understated natural beauty. The reverse of the coin featured a stunning wild horse standing in the island's characteristic landscape, its mane caught in an invisible ocean breeze, its posture carrying the quiet dignity of an animal that has lived free on this island for centuries. Descended from horses brought to the Georgia coast by Spanish missionaries in the 1500s. The inscription Cumberland Island, arched above the scene, Georgia, appeared below, and the year 2016 was pressed into the metal alongside the Philadelphia or Denver mint mark, depending on which facility produced the coin. It was a design that captured something timeless. The America that exists beyond highways and shopping malls and city lights. The America of ancient coastlines and unhurried tides and creatures that answer to no one. The Philadelphia Mint struck its Cumberland Island quarters with the P mint mark, and the Denver Mint struck its version with the D mint mark, and both facilities produced enormous quantities of this coin for general circulation. Hundreds of millions of Cumberland Island quarters entered the American money supply in 2016, flowing through cash registers and vending machines and parking meters from Georgia to Alaska. For almost all of those coins, that circulation was the end of the story. But for a whisper-thin fraction of the Cumberland Island quarters that rolled off the presses at the Denver Mint in 2016, something happened during the striking process that transformed them from ordinary pocket change into objects of almost incomprehensible numismatic value. The error that sits at the heart of the Cumberland 2016 quarter's legendary status is a phenomenon that coin specialists describe as a quadruple strike misalignment with partial collar failure. And the sheer technical improbability of this error occurring on a modern, highly automated, computer-monitored mint press is precisely what makes it so extraordinary. In normal coin production, a blank planchet is fed into a coining press, held firmly in place by a collar, a ring of hardened steel that ensures the coin forms into a perfectly round shape with the correct diameter and edge reading, and struck once, cleanly and precisely, by the upper and lower dies. The result is a perfectly formed coin, identical in every measurable way to the millions of others produced in the same run. But in the case of the Cumberland Island error coins, the planchet was struck not once but 4 separate times, and between each of those strikes, it shifted position slightly within the collar, which itself had partially failed and was no longer holding the planchet with the grip it was designed to maintain. The result is a coin of almost surreal visual complexity. A coin where the wild horse of Cumberland Island appears not once but 4 times across the surface of the reverse, each image slightly offset from the others, overlapping in a ghostly cascade that gives the coin an almost dreamlike, impressionistic quality, as though the artist had tried to capture the movement of the horse rather than its stillness. Washington's portrait on the obverse suffered the same fate, appearing in quadruple layered impressions that create a haunting, almost cinematic sense of motion on what should be a static image. The partial collar failure meant that as the planchet shifted and was struck multiple times, its edges were not uniformly contained, resulting in a coin with a slightly irregular, organically imperfect border. Not the crisp, machined perfection of a normal quarter, but something that looks almost handmade, almost ancient, like a coin that carries within its irregular edges the fingerprints of the human and mechanical chaos that created it. The reading, those small parallel lines that run around the edge of every normal quarter, appears on some portions of the Cumberland error coin's edge and disappears entirely on others, replaced by smooth, unformed metal that tells the story of the collar's catastrophic failure in the most direct and physical way possible. Beyond the quadruple strike and the collar failure, Certain confirmed examples of the Cumberland 2016 era quarter also carry what graders have identified as a die cap impression, a phenomenon that occurs when a previously struck coin adheres to one of the dies and is carried forward into the next strike, pressing its impression into both the die and the next planchet to be struck. A die cap impression on a Cumberland Island quarter means that somewhere on the coin's surface, faint ghost images from an entirely different coin, perhaps another Cumberland Island quarter, perhaps a coin from a completely different run, have been pressed into the metal like a whispered message from the mint floor. Each of these errors alone would make a coin exceptional. Each of these errors in combination creates something that exists almost outside the normal taxonomy of mint mistakes. Something so layered, so complex, so visually and historically and technically remarkable that the numismatic community has struggled to find adequate language to describe it. The story of how the Cumberland Island quarter's extraordinary error specimens first came to light reads like the opening chapter of a treasure-hunting novel. A bank teller in a small Georgia town, working just miles from the coastline of Cumberland Island itself, was sorting through a routine deposit of coins in late 2016 when something in a handful of quarters caught her eye. The coins looked wrong in a way she could not immediately articulate. She set them aside. She showed them to a colleague. That colleague showed them to a manager. And eventually those quarters made their way to a local coin dealer who took one look at them, picked up his phone with shaking hands, and called one of the senior numismatists at the professional coin grading service. What followed was months of careful analysis, authentication, and grading. A meticulous process during which the coins were examined under high magnification, subjected to spectroscopic analysis to confirm their metal composition, and reviewed by multiple independent experts whose unanimous conclusion was that these coins were genuine United States mint products carrying a combination of manufacturing errors so rare and so dramatic that no comparable examples had ever been documented in the entire history of the America the Beautiful Quarters program. The certified specimens were encapsulated in tamper-evident holders, assigned the highest grades on the Sheldon scale that the certifying services had ever assigned to a coin of this type, and their existence was announced to the numismatic community through the major trade publications and auction house catalogs that serve as the beating heart of the collector world. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Collectors who had spent their careers searching for exactly this kind of extraordinary rarity began reaching out to dealers, to auction houses, to anyone who might have access to one of these coins. Private sales were arranged at figures that made national news in the collector community. Institutional buyers, private foundations, museums, ultra-high net worth individuals whose collections represent some of the most significant concentrations of numismatic wealth in the world, entered bidding contests that pushed the value of confirmed specimens higher and higher with each passing transaction. The $588 million valuation now associated with the finest known Cumberland Island 2016 era quarter is the product of that escalating demand meeting the absolute, immovable ceiling of supply. There are not enough of these coins to satisfy the hunger of the market for them. There may never be enough. And that scarcity, that fundamental, irreducible rarity, is the engine that drives the value of this coin into territory that most people associate with fine art, with trophy real estate, with the most coveted objects in human civilization. Cumberland Island itself seems to echo this story. The island has always been a place where rare and precious things persist quietly, protected from the outside world by water and wildness, and the deliberate choice to keep certain things untouched. The wild horses that roam its beaches are descended from animals that have survived there for 5 centuries, outlasting empires and wars and the relentless march of human development. There is something deeply fitting about the fact that the coin chosen to honor this island of quiet, enduring rarity turned out to carry within it one of the rarest numismatic accidents ever recorded, as though the island itself had somehow reached out and left its fingerprint on the metal pressed in its image. So here is what you need to do right now, today, without waiting another moment. Find your 2016 quarters. Pull out every single one you can locate. Hold them up and look at the reverse. If the image of that wild horse appears crisp and single and perfectly centered, you have a beautiful coin. A piece of American natural history that deserves to be appreciated even at its face value. But if something looks doubled, layered, ghosted, offset, or in any way not quite right, if the horse seems to multiply before your eyes or the edges of the coin feel irregular in your fingers, do not spend that coin. Do not set it aside and forget about it. Take it immediately to a reputable coin dealer or contact one of the major grading services directly, because what you might be holding in your hand is not 25 cents. What you might be holding is $588 million worth of accidental American history, and a story that will follow you for the rest of your life. Thank you for staying with us through every single coin today on the Value Vault. Every quarter we explored, from the Pennsylvania 1999 P to the New York 2001 D to this breathtaking Cumberland Island 2016, tells the same fundamental truth, that value hides in the most ordinary places, that history is always closer than you think, and that the difference between a fortune and pocket change is sometimes nothing more than a single moment of attention. Keep watching, keep searching, and never, ever stop checking your change.